It's called projection. And they were so urgent in their need. You see, this is the story of our being in crisis. They were so urgent in their need, they are us, so urgent in their need that they could not hear or make space for the message that he was offering. Their hopes and their desperation was in conflict with reality. I mean, he rode into town on a mule. But I think in their minds they were expecting a grand savior king on a white steed. He preached peace, and they were expecting a overthrow of the government and restoration of proper power distribution. So much so that they couldn't even notice that he was, well, pretty much an ordinary guy on a mule with this message that said, you know what? Reality is right here, right now, not later when, right here, even if it's dark. Here. But that's not what they heard. They heard that here was somebody who could do miraculous things, and maybe he can do it for me. Maybe if that thing changes, then everything will be fine. And in the high emotional expectation and the political frenzy of the time, perhaps a message about love and peace just wasn't enough. They needed action to demonstrate. Like now. You know, even when he had his own dark journey and he asked them to come pray with him in the garden, if you know the story, you know what they did. They fell asleep. Sit still, be alone in their mind. They had a different outcome planned. But he didn't come with a strategy for political change. If anything, he left them with this message of unity in God, a message that perhaps they didn't want to or couldn't hear at the time. Maybe it was because they wanted so badly to be right about what was going on and the injustice of what was going on. And maybe what they wanted was validation that the world is indeed a bad place to be in. And if there is anything that will turn the dark night of the soul into a nightmare, it's a commitment to being right. Ouch. Dr. Philip McGraw, in one of his earliest books, he wrote about this specifically. What most people want is not truth, but validation. They want reinforcements for their thinking, right or wrong. They seek out the people and the information that support the conclusions they have already reached, factual or otherwise. The only thing they want to hear are things that make them feel good. See, I think Jesus saw that. Because when he rode up to the city and he saw them all happy and joyous and expectant, he wept. He cried. And he said, and I paraphrase it, he said, if only you could recognize what things bring peace, but they are hidden from your eyes and will become your undoing. See, their anguish, it's a symbol of crisis, the dark night of the soul. In that, they couldn't do the one thing that he was asking them to do. Sit still, stay awake, and pray. Maybe you know about that. Maybe you know what it's like to have your eyes be blinded by desperation, to the point where you could not see the reality that was all around you, to the point where you could not stop struggling with your own expectations and desire for an outcome, to the point where you could not even hear what teachers and role models and your own faith tradition was telling you, because it was telling you the thing you didn't want to hear. And so even the people you love become enemy images. For example, in this story, he talked about God to the people as a personal experience, something that was available to all people. But they insisted that it was only true for him. And when he spoke about healing, he talked about the inner relationship to healing, something that is available and accessible to all people, a question of faith. And they insisted that he could heal because he was special. And even when they asked him about it, he returned to them, but don't you know that you are God's? But they insisted that it was him that was God. It's our story of those moments when we just cannot hear because out of our anguish we are trying to reach out of the moment instead of being still, letting things be. Palm Sunday is the beginning in the Christian world of a holy week, as Reverend Joyce mentioned, a time of reflection. It's the time of the build-up to this great and dramatic, tragic event, the story of the fall. And then, after a period of silence, there is this grand and dramatic resurrection. But something had to die first. I don't know what it is in your story that has to die. Maybe it's a dream you don't want to let go of. Maybe it's a projection that you believe in. Maybe it's a position that you are stuck in. Maybe it's a plan or a prophecy or a person. I don't know what it is. And I just tell you this story because maybe you're facing that, and maybe you are in a spot that you would call darkness on the path. Or maybe you're just in a place where you kind of need an oil and filter change. But either way, maybe you can take the invitation from this week to drop an anchor again in that which never changes. And sit in it, in your own mind. Especially if you're between the falling down and getting up. And then in that space, to look and consider, if I've given my power, if you've given your power over to somebody else, then to let it come back to you through no act of will of your own, but because that's what it does. Or to consider if you've let your vitality dissipate through whatever it is that caused it, to be still and let life come back to you fully, creatively, on its own terms, in the way it wants to and is showing up now. Stop fighting it. Or if you have placed great expectations on some long-awaited for something or someone, to then let yourself come back to the only thing that life ever has for you, this current moment. Or if you've thought that other people have what you want, or what you should look like, or how you should act, or are more spiritual, or more better in any way, to sit in that for a moment until it is quiet, and to let rise up in you your beautiful self, and to let the stillness in your heart instruct you what to do. I don't think transformation is about becoming a better you. If in your story the thing that has to die is you, then there is still work to be done. I think transformation maybe is about the journey of becoming more clearly who you are. Awake, undefended, out of control.